Thank you. I so appreciate that very informative clip. And now, as I told you, we are here today with a friend, and he is a new friend and is right on the ground, right in the middle of the conflict in Israel. His name is Teddy. And Teddy Chadwick, thank you for being with us today. And your ministry is the Jerusalem Tabernacle of David. And so thank you so much for joining us for this time together.
Thank you for having me on. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Well, Teddy, just before we talk about what's going on there, and you are passionate, as many are, about really clarifying the narrative. It is an unfortunate time in history when we have to really check, recheck, and triple check what we're being told, where it's coming from, what the source is, and then just making sure that it's accurate, that it's lined up with what's truly happening, and that it's biblically accurate. I really feel like we're in such a narrative war that is trying to divide the body. And that's why I really appreciate that you're going to come on and kind of dispel some myths and share with us about what you're seeing with your own eyes right there on a daily basis. But prior to that, Teddy, can you just share with the viewers a little bit about your story, your testimony, your love for music, the ministry God's given you, and how in the world did you get where you are? And not only did you get there, you've been there for almost 20 years.
Well, it's an amazing story. I became a musician starting at the age of 9 and started picking up one instrument after another. Eventually, as a young adult, I moved to Hollywood and had music projects there, comedy music show, heavy metal band, and a bunch of different projects. I was also acting in movies as well, and doing a little bit of the entertainment business. But I had seeds of the Bible planted in my heart from a very, very young age. And I came back to that in a miraculous way when I reached the end of my rope sort of situation. And I was lying on the floor, and I just cried out from the bottom of my heart. And I just said, God, if you're still there, and if you still care about my stupid little life and my stupid situation, then please take away this depression
Oh,
in the name of Yeshua. If you're there and if you care, because I can't live like this. And it's as if he was sitting on the edge of his seat, just waiting for me to ask, because within a split second, he just yanked that depression and that suicide spirit right out of my body and straight up through my spine and out the top of my head. And I immediately felt 100 pounds lighter. I immediately saw the colors of everything was bright, and the colors of everything had suddenly become as if I took sunglasses off. And it was a transformation within a split second in such a way that I knew that it was a miracle. I knew that it wasn't me just getting a hold of myself. It wasn't me just kind of getting my thinking straight or anything like that. I couldn't do it that fast.
yeah.
There's no way. So
Supernatural encounter. Face to
absolutely
face.
supernatural. So that showed me that not only was God there, but also that he cared for me. What am I? Just one out of billions.
Yeah.
But yet he was caring for me and listening to me, and he had all that power to set me free like that. And so all that power is wrapped up in the name of Jesus, the Son of God, the Messiah who was sent from God to the world. And so it's the name above all names. And whether people refer to him as Jesus or Yeshua, the Messiah, different languages, he picks up the phone when a person calls and when a person seeks after him with sincerity. And I was sincere at that moment, and I've remained sincere ever since then, because it was such a transformation and such a change. And so my music became transformed soon after that. And so I've been here for almost 20 years now as a musician, and just continuing to write music, perform music, play different instruments like the 10-string harp right there, which is a David's harp, King David, and that's based on a design found in archaeology on the Bar Kokhba coin. And I still play the piano and the guitar and regular instruments too, but that's a biblical instrument that's very special.
Yeah.
And writing music in English and in Hebrew and in different languages, and reaching people with the power of music and with the power that music can do, and just living life and traveling the world as well. It's
Yeah.
just such an honor and such a privilege to serve the King of Kings this way. It's great.
Teddy, that's beautiful. It's just heart warming and touching. God's so good. And one thing I appreciate is that when you had that moment with him, he transformed your spirit, but the gifts and the call of God that he put on you, he didn't take those away. So many people are scared to come to Christ. They're scared to accept Yeshua because they think they're going to have to stop doing the things that they love or that they're wired to do. And you're still doing music. It's just the author and the founder of music is who you're living for.
Right.
So, yeah. So how did you get to Israel? How did you get there?
Well, yeah, that was a story. That was a journey. And it was a journey that took a number of years. But after all of a sudden, God started putting Israel on my heart, and he did that in a miraculous way too, at a stage when I'm not sure I could have really identified Israel on a map at that time. But a friend at work had told me years prior, pay attention to what's going on with Israel in the news.
Wow.
And then pay attention to what was written about Israel in the prophetic books in the Bible. And you'll see a lot of things match up, and it's going to blow your mind. Well, my mind was blown, and I was just shocked because I had thought, the whole time that Israel is just a nation like any other nation.
Yeah.
But what I began to realize is that there's these prophecies written there, and God is fulfilling those prophecies. And actually, just a crazy thing to throw in here, to think that God would abandon his covenant with his people in order to make a covenant with different people. What kind of security would anybody actually have in that? I mean, you're going to feel secure having a covenant with a God who just abandoned his covenant with another people? That doesn't seem very secure at all. And the reality is that the prophecies say that, yes, Israel, you have gone against me and you've turned away from me. And yes, I will cast you away, but for a moment, and I'll bring you back again. And that's exactly what started to happen in the 1850s, is that people started coming back. And then 100 years later, in 1948, there was a new modern land formed, a new modern government for this parcel of land smaller than half of New Jersey.
Yeah.
And yet it's a part of that biblical heritage. And yet this tiny little parcel of land was never incorporated into any other nation. It was never annexed. It was never turned into another kingdom. It was a part of Turkey. It was a part of the Roman Empire, but it was never officially made a part of anything. It was just this territory that they ruled over. And, there were the Canaanites that lived here, and they had different kings over different cities, but they never formed a nation. The Philistines never formed a nation. They had kings in different cities, but a city king is basically a mayor. That's not a nation.
That's right.
And they were all rooted out, and they were all destroyed. And when Rome conquered in the 1st century, and then again they reconquered in the 2nd century, even worse, they renamed it after the Philistines, just to basically poke the Jewish people in the eye.
Yeah.
But the Philistines were dead and gone, and everybody knew that. But they named it Palestina, just as a way to be an insult. And so that name kind of stuck for the area, but it never became incorporated again into a nation.
Yeah.
So not under Rome, not under the Turks, not under England. England ruled between the two world wars, and England didn't make this a nation, didn't colonize it, didn't make it a part of their empire officially. They just kind of sat there and watched over it for those decades there. So then 1948 is an interesting year. And so I began to realize that there's prophecy about it, and there's things happening today in the news that relate with prophecies that were written thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
And so I began to wake up and realize this is not just another nation, just like a bunch of other nations around the world. And I love them all. I love all the nations, and I know that God does too.
Yes.
And there's room in his kingdom for every tribe and every family and every tongue, every language, every people group is welcome in God's kingdom through the power of his Messiah. And that's what he sent for the world and also for Israel. But he never completely turned his back, and he's bringing his people back to the land again, and he's going to watch out and protect. So that's a little bit long-winded,
Yes.
but just to share.
Well, I so appreciate that you said yes to the Lord, and you went and you work with congregations, and you work with synagogues, and you work with men's ministries, and you bring song, and you train them, and that's so important. And God works through music. He loves music.
Yeah.
And I do want to encourage anyone, if you want to know more about Teddy's ministry or support his ministry or connect with him, the website is on the screen. It's been on the screen. It's jtod.org, which is the Jerusalem Tabernacle of David, jtod.org. Okay, so let's go into clarifying a little bit, because your boots on the ground, and we will not disclose your actual physical location just for security reasons, privacy reasons, but you live right in the center of where a lot of the heat is right now, the conflict. You were right where a lot of the attack took place on October 7th, the devastating, horrible massacre and murder of innocents. And as a result, now we are in a full-fledged conflict. But listen, tell us a little bit, because you live among the Gazans. You live there. You work there. You know them. You call them friend, associate, colleague. You're friendly. Tell us what's going on, the truth.
Okay. Gaza is a collection of 3 cities, Arabic Muslim cities. There used to be a Christian Arab minority there, but they've been mostly kicked out by the Muslims at this point. Up until 1967, that territory was a part of Egypt. And Egypt didn't want that territory back when Israel gave a lot of land back that Israel had won during the 6-Day War in a peacemaking effort.
Yeah.
Egypt just didn't want it back. So today, Egypt still has the southern crossing point from Egypt into Gaza, so they can provide supplies to the people in Gaza just as well, or even better than the Israelis can provide supplies through their border crossing on the northern side.
Yes.
That northern side has been the site of around 130 trucks of supplies entering into Gaza from Israel every single day, 130 trucks. And it is that place where suddenly on October 7th, early in the morning on the Sabbath day, when everybody was still basically asleep, they crashed through in the area of the Erez crossing, where Israel had been blessing the Gazan people for so many years by bringing those truckloads of supplies through there. So when that attack happened, and there's a lot of atrocities there, it was basically a surprise attack, unprovoked, out of the blue. The Gaza narrative would say that they deserve to bring that attack because Israel has been occupying Arabic lands. But the reality is that none of the land here was ever claimed as part of any Arabic nation. Right. So hard to really say that. Under Turkish rule, land ownership was actually not even legal under the Turkish rule, and the same thing under British rule too, between the world wars. So then what happened, jumping up to, modern history, in 2005, Israel completely pulled all their army and all their personnel out of Gaza, all of their policing,
100%.
100%. It was all pulled out of Gaza so that Gaza can rule themselves. And they had an election, and it was kind of trumpeted around the world as a wonderful democratic election in Gaza. But Hamas was the winning party in that election. And the very next thing they did was to have a coup and attack the members of the Fatah party and drag their streets behind motorcycles on chains through the streets of Gaza and throw the members of the political party that had ruled before in Gaza, the Arab political party. They threw them off the top of high-rise buildings to their deaths. And then the farmland, irrigated farms and factories that were donated to Gaza from the Jewish people was immediately destroyed by the Arabs in Gaza. And they destroyed the airport that Israel left behind for them. And so all of this talk about the siege, basically they brought it upon themselves. And what remains of that is actually enforced by Egypt just as much as by Israel. Neither country, because Israel and Egypt are actually formalized countries inside of the United Nations. And so they have to play by the rules that all the nations play by. But the government in Gaza is not a recognized nation and doesn't want to be a recognized nation, because then it would also have to play by the rules.
By the rules, yes.
And so they brought the siege upon themselves, and they don't want a nation. And yet, in spite of all that, Israel and Egypt have still been providing supplies through those crossing points daily on an ongoing basis until this genocidal attack happened on October 7th. So meanwhile, in 2005, when Israel pulled out, Gaza had 1.4 million people living inside Gaza. Now it's 2.3 million people living inside Gaza. So what kind of genocide do you think Israel is actually accomplishing against the Gazan people?
Exactly.
Their population grew from 1.4 million to 2.3 million from 2005 until now. And it just keeps on growing. So on the one hand, people want to say that Israel is the Goliath and Gaza or the Palestinian people are the David, and the Goliath is just crushing them and destroying them, but the population numbers keep going up. So how do you explain that? People say that Israel is supported by the US or they have such powerful military on their own. Okay, if Israel is so powerful, and if they feel genocidal towards the Arabs, then how come they're doing such a poor job of it?
Right.
So clearly, everyone can accept that Israel is got some smart people. So that is kind of undisputable. So then if there is no genocide against the Palestinian people, then that must mean that Israelis have no will to commit genocide. They have no desire to commit genocide. Now, if you flip that around and take a look, just look it up online, the Hamas founding document paper says that their reason for existing is to wipe out every Jew, to destroy every Jew.
Yes.
Just wipe them off, out of Israel, off the face of the earth. That is written in black and white. You will not find a single official Israeli document that says anything like that. So now it is a bit complicated, just to do the nuance for a little bit. Here, I live in the West Bank, but I call it Samaria. Samaria in Judea, in Israel, are called West Bank of the Jordan River in the rest of the world.
Yes.
We have area A, B, and C. In area A, no Jews are allowed. In area B, there's an Arab majority and a Jewish minority. In area C, where I am, there's a Jewish majority and an Arab minority. And that Arab minority is allowed to come into the Jewish towns for work when they have working papers. And where I am is about 4 Jewish towns surrounded by 5 Arab Palestinian towns, and they have 0% unemployment in those Arab towns. Why? Because they all have working papers, and they all pass in and out of their gates and in and out of my gates every single day for work to come and work here, and they get great, they have good salary, they have good jobs.
Okay, so
Besides that,
let me underline that.
yeah,
So in your area, there
yeah.
is 100% employment.
Among the Arabs in my area who are living under the governance of the Palestinian Authority, which is a different governing body than Hamas in Gaza, but
Yeah.
it's still an Arab Palestinian government that is here in this part of the land. And yes, that is the government that they answer to. And yes, they still have working papers to come and work in the Jewish towns here. And they do that, and they have 100% employment, 0% unemployment in my area.
Yeah.
Now, the further that you go into, let's say, area A or area B, where the Arab towns are more isolated and not very close to the Jewish towns, they certainly have more unemployment there because they don't have as many Jewish towns nearby to employ them.
Right.
Israel has done a lot to try to build up the Arab economy in this land. And that's why even the Gazan people, 20,000 people every day, have been allowed into Israel with their working papers for jobs. So that's been going on until this war began, which again was a complete surprise, and it was a complete sneak attack, unprovoked. Now, it's not right to say that it was provoked simply because there's Jews here living on the land. International laws of war say that you cannot attack non-combatants. But what the people of Gaza did that morning, what the militants of Hamas did, is they attacked non-combatants who were unarmed and sleeping in their beds.
That's right.
And what they get as a result is Israel goes in and attacks their military installments.
That's right.
Israel does not attack their civilian places.
Yes.
And when Hamas converts a civilian location like a hospital into a military location by putting missiles and weapons and military personnel in the hospital or below the hospital, then according to the laws of war international, that has now been converted into a military installation, and it legally can be attacked by the opposing army. Israel is very careful even about that, but that doesn't mean they don't have the right to attack if they chose to.
That's right.
So when Israel drops leaflets and flyers over northern Gaza, as they have been, that's to warn the civilians that they should get away because it's turned into a battle zone. Why is it a battle zone? Because Hamas is firing missiles at Tel Aviv, which is a city of about 2 million people, yes. 2 million Israeli Arabs and Jews and different religions living in the greater Tel Aviv area. And those rockets don't know any race or language or color.
That's right.
So everyone is in danger because of what Hamas is doing. And so Israel first is focusing on the northern part of Gaza for that reason. And it's not for any kind of genocidal reason. It's only to go after the military installments, to take out those rocket launchers and the other military things.
Yes.
There is a very low rate of civilian casualties that get caught in the crossfire of all of that. But the rate of civilian casualties is much higher when you look around the world at every other war that ever happens.
Yeah.
There's a higher civilian casualty rate. But Hamas, on the other hand, as well as the violent Palestinians here in the West Bank, they seek to attack civilians first.
Yes.
That's what they're seeking to do. And so it's a completely upside down mentality.
It is. Teddy, this is a complex subject. It is a very emotional subject. It's a spiritual subject. And you have done such a phenomenal job of just giving us perspective of the historical foundation. And, many don't understand this because, many in the Western world, people have their own issues and their own problems. And so unless they have really gone out of their way and committed themselves to get informed, they don't know this narrative. And so I really appreciate you coming, giving us some history. Obviously, it would take us doing 20 shows to get brought up to speed, but you are a wealth of knowledge. I appreciate you being there. I appreciate your perspective. And listen, I want to use this program so that we can be the army of God, the spiritual IDF, so to speak, that the ecclesia, the church of Yeshua, of Jesus Christ, can do our part in the heavenlies. And we can't pray accurately or talk accurately unless we're informed accurately. So Teddy, thank you. I want you to come back in the future and continue to give us updates from on the ground. And once again, viewers, I encourage you to reach out to Teddy. I'm sure he's willing to dialogue and conversate. If you have a heart and you want to know, find out about his ministry and pray for him. He's got a big mission and God's using him. Thank you all. Teddy, thank you. And thank you all for watching today. My name is Jen Mallon and I encourage you, come home.